So it's a breakdown of integrity. So this is the definition of cognitive dissonance. It is when one uses selective memory, which creates bias in the situation, what I call immaculate perception. We've talked about this before. Let's look that one up. Okay. I've got it right here, babe. So here we go. Immaculate perception.
So the immaculate perception is one's belief bias based on experiential blindness. One's immaculate perception is fueled and deepened by confirmation bias. It is marked by prediction error and illusionary beliefs. It is a space where assumptions are not questioned and low self-awareness. It is about who is right with no awareness or attempt to discover what is right. And you were in that space of feeling like right. when you're like, I'm going to show them and forget it. That is all about who is right.
And I wanted to be right in the worst way.
And wanting to be right is an addictive process chemically in your brain.
Right. And when I wanted to be right, it was because I'll show you, I'll get you, and then I'll do something stupid that is not necessarily in my best interest.
Or in what you actually want. So this immaculate perception also is without empathy or compassion. And when we talk about empathy, and that's another thing we've broken out and defined in previous podcasts, is that being able to look through someone else's eyes. Well, when your perception is so biased, you're not going to be able to take on a different perception. And when you lose that ability to be flexible in perceptions, you've actually lost all perception in reality.
And that's the challenge, is the perception is so, and that's where it's a cognitive dissonance. It is so moved out because it's my selective memory, but it's not in touch with really what's going on. And in our challenges, when we start telling ourselves false beliefs, for example, is none of that's real. You're not worthless. You can develop good relationships with people, but when you say I'm not worth it, I'm not good enough, I'm helpless, I'm hopeless, I'm powerless, and you follow a behavior along that line, you push everyone away, and it's your way of medicating. So my argument has been for some time now that people who move into anxiety and or depression are simply in cognitive dissonance. They're medicating themselves. And I know that the medical world likes to find this magic pill to cure the ill. But the challenge we've got is you don't cure the problem. Because that person who's medicating will continue to do it, and that's how they cope with the scenario moving on. So to further the conversation here, the key to confronting a false narrative is facing the false belief head on and questioning it. So I said, what if? So I was having to question me, which I'm not very good at it sometimes when I move into the who is right.
And I just want to highlight that strategy of being able to ask the question, what if? Have the self-awareness of, oh wait, I'm being triggered. I'm losing some rationality here. Now, if I can do the what if, I've just gained that perception flexibility.
Right.
I can try on another thought just for the sake of trying it on and seeing what that feels like.
Well, what you're doing when you're what-ifing is you're giving yourself a chance to...
Hey, that sounds really funny.
...to interrupt the movement from trigger to flood. That's the idea. So let me see, where was I? All behavior is driven by beliefs. Oh, this is critical. Because of my experiences in the past, I created...
With high-stake negotiations.
Right. And, well, to me, any negotiations, but this was a high stake. My experiences have given me a narrative about that. I have a belief structure about any time that I'm negotiating to buy something, that whether it's true or not, it's my interpretation of that. When it got violated, I went into a preset mindset, my immaculate perception, that's you can't do that. Well, why can't he or she do that? Who says they can't do that?
Well, it's interesting you said that it was violated, because it really wasn't. It just that...
In my mind's eye it was.
Right.
That's the word violated carries the kind of message that I'm trying to portray. I'm frustrated. I was very frustrated. And so I was going to make an irrational decision because I'm frustrated, and I would have medicated and felt great for about half a day. Then I'd have been miserable and regretting, and then I would have had to eat crow if I were to have still wanted to do what I wanted to do, and it would have been embarrassing. Okay, so what I'd like to do in the time we have left is go over a couple cognitive dissonances that exist. So when I was going to say all these behaviors, the very behavior that I engaged in, what I was doing, was the result of my beliefs that I have about me. My beliefs were the result of experiences that I had in the past. So keep that in mind. When we move to cognitive dissonance or distortions, it's because of these immaculate perceptions. So number 1, emotional reasoning. Letting your feelings guide your interpretation of reality. So what would be an example of emotional reasoning in this scenario? I was saying, you can't do that. Now, that was not logical at all. Totally emotional on my part.
Well, would there also be like a sense of control in all of these processes that I perceive the world based on that I have to feel the control in a purchasing situation because I am the purchaser, which of course you still have the control.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do like having control when I do that. So here's a quote coming from the researchers in this one. Mm-hmm. I feel depressed and my marriage is messed up. That would be my feelings are guiding my interpretation. So if I feel depressed, in that moment, I felt frustrated and I felt thwarted, almost damned. Like they just threw a board up in front of me and said, you can't cross that at all.
Did it feel like you were being cheated?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I just wanted to have my say in court, I think. I don't mean to come off as petty, but I felt like I had no voice in that moment. You would argue so. I could walk.
Yes, you can always say no.
Yeah, I can. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Instead of me
it's
just
where the rationality departs.
If I'd have gone to flood, I would have skipped all the other what ifs and I'd gone right to I'm walking. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
And that would have felt so good. I'm just saying. And then I would have felt like an absolute horse's patoot. Yeah. Okay. Mind reading. You assume that you know what people think without sufficient evidence. It is based on your immaculate perception. For example, he thinks I'm a loser.
So social comparisons and the and then going back to Arbinger Institute, it would be the must be seen as.
Yep. So I was talking to a client the other day. This was fascinating. He's frustrated right now with a significant other of his. And they had spent some time apart, and the significant other seemed to be very manipulated by anybody with whom this person's in company with. She posted some pictures on Instagram, and then he checked the bank account and realized that she had purchased a bunch of likes for those pictures. Now, I didn't know that existed.
What? You can buy likes?
Yeah, so
what?
Evidently that's something that's phenomenal.
Seriously?
Yeah. Okay, so...
Okay, then this is a problem.
Well, I didn't know this existed. And so as he's telling me the story, trying to maintain some sort of professional decorum, I'm saying, okay, let me just make sure I got it. You can buy likes for your Instagram. Can you do it in Facebook too? You can do it in Facebook too. Fascinating.
I had no idea.
Okay, so in other words, what's the mindset of somebody who's buying a like?
I must be perceived as being, and I less than, so I must be seen as better than others, or liked well enough, or digitally, as if that even means anything.
Okay, so if you go back to the 3 A's.
Yeah.
The 3 A's, that's affirmation, affection, and approval.
This is affirmation, affection, approval in a really hardcore
Okay, so I want to go over
deficit.
The sayings that we talked about. We've done this a couple times, but this one is so powerful. So what we'll do is we'll finish up with this one. We each need boundaries, identity, safety, and a degree of order and consistency early to prime our first half of life. We need to feel special with an infinite supply of affirmation, affection, and approval, but notice what they're for efforts and earned accomplishments, or, and this is why we're buying likes, or we will spend the rest of our lives searching for, demanding, and bemoaning its lack from others. If we are mirrored early in life, we won't spend the second half of life begging for the attention of others. And 9 times out of 10 or higher, there's some sort of an attachment disorder or trauma that happens within the family of origin that causes that person to think they have to seek for outside affirmation, affection, and approval in order for them to get through the day.
So this mind reading cognitive distortion really is the 3A, the seeking of the 3As, because it's driven by the fact that I believe others think I'm less than, so I have to go get their attention, affirmation, approval.
So we're going to need to pick this up another time. That was a lot of fun. We barely scratched the surface on these cognitive distortions and how they apply with the false narratives that we tell ourselves.
And I'm really grateful that you got yourself out of that last little trap.
I really appreciate that. I was kind of listening to my lovely bride there at that moment. So thank you very much for listening. Just remember the following. All resources are within you. You've got the skill set, the ability, and the capacity to work yourself through that interrupting phase from trigger to flood, because it's perfect. No matter what happens, it's exactly what you need at that time to become integrated, to come closer to God. Perfect is a mistake that gets a retake. We look forward to talking to you again.
I try to turn it down, but I can't quite drown it out. I'm tortured every day.